Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to our Air Twister video review and happy release day for Air Twister as well. You are probably watching this on November the 10th, the day of Air Twister coming out to consoles and PC. James and I are going to talk about the game, talk about the versions that we've tested, give our thoughts, and then maybe sort of towards the end of the video give our thoughts about what might be next for YSNET and sort of how they might move forward post Air Twister, post launch, etc. But as ever, I have my esteemed colleague with me, James. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Cheers, mate. Happy Air Twister Day.
There we are. Love it.
Hopefully everyone's enjoying the game so far.
Brilliant game so far.
Yep.
People may have seen the written review that's already out, and hopefully you enjoyed reading that. This is sort of an addition to that, essentially. So, bit of background. You probably gathered with James putting it on the screen. He has tested the Nintendo Switch version. Yep. And I've had the privilege of testing the PC version, which is a massive upgrade from the Apple TV version that I tested a year ago.
That's true, actually. Yeah, you're right there.
So actually, there we are.
Can save now, right?
I can save, but there is one thing I can't do, which I'll come into when I come onto the PC version. But before I do, I'm going to come into the Nintendo Switch version, James. What are your thoughts? How did you enjoy it? And sort of give us your overview on Air Twister on Nintendo Switch.
Okay, well, overall, it's a fantastic game, even on the Nintendo Switch. Now, I say even because it comes with a couple of drawbacks, I would say. I mean, I've not tested any other version apart from the iPhone release that was like just over a year ago now, or whenever that was first brought to the iPhone. And it's very comparable from a touchscreen sense. However, there's sort of a dip in graphics. I'm not quite sure the reason why that, whether it's like been optimized poorly or there's something they can do maybe to implement a patch at some point to increase the way that the graphics look. I mean, they're still nice. However, when you compare them to the other versions of the game, there's definitely I don't want to say huge, but there is quite a drop back in the graphics department. So what that'll bring to you when you're actually playing the game, you'll notice that Princess Arch looks a little bit blurry as the enemies are coming in. Those initial sort of polygon, hexagon looking type enemies, like your typical Space Harrier looking enemies, they're a bit jagged around the edges. And there's sort of a strange, I don't know if they're sort of tweaking the resolution on the fly, but the texture quality of, say, Princess Arch's outfit will change occasionally, especially in a cutscene. You'll actually see it go from like a worse low-res texture to a high-res texture, like mid-cutscene. It'll keep flicking, and it's the same happening with the environment. So as you're flying through the environment, things seem to be popping in. But it's like a strange pop, and it's not like the graphic pops in like that. It's like the graphics are there, but then it's like drawing them on the fly or something. It's some strange graphical anomalies that you'll notice as you're playing through the game, which is possibly the only disappointment with the Switch version. This is in handheld mode, by the way. If you put it in docked mode, there is an increase in the graphics again. I don't think it's going to be quite as high as maybe the PC version that you played, Matt, or say the PS5 version or one of the other versions available, but it's definitely different, like a bit of a jump than the handheld version. The best way to play Air Twister overall, however, in my opinion, is probably going to be the Switch release. And I say that after I've just sort of said the disappointments of it, but because of the touchscreen element, and obviously Air Twister potentially was designed for a touchscreen device, so it ran on Apple's iPhone back in the day, iPads, etc. And it was great using your finger to sort of target enemies and fire and whatnot. And obviously on an iPhone device, that was to move the character around as well, Princess Arch. However, the benefit of the Switch now, because obviously you've got thumbsticks, you can actually combine movement with touchscreen. So I'm sort of holding it like this. So you've got the benefit of being able to move Princess Arch freely with your left thumbstick and target enemies at the same time. So on any other release of the game, like the PC or the PS4 4 or 5 version or Xbox, you have to physically move Princess Arch so that she sort of pans over what you want to target, essentially. Whereas on the Switch release, you literally could just drag your finger. So you can make these swipe lines and say, because typically you've got groups of 5, 3 or 4 or 5 of enemies in a row, sort of in different patterns as well. So, for example, the bonus stage, if you've seen some of the footage that I recorded, I'm literally just doing that like a triangle shape, and it's targeting and destroying them all in one quick motion. So control-wise is definitely the best on the Switch handheld mode. It just comes with the caveat of slightly a dip in the graphics. Performance-wise, however, I believe that is probably why the graphics take a hit, because it feels to me, and I'm not amazing at being able to tell the FPS of a game just by looking at it, but I can tell it's higher than 30 for sure. It's got to be trying to hit that 60 mark in handheld mode, and that's probably some of the sacrifices they've had to make to try and get it to run as well as it needs to run on the Switch, because don't forget, it's an arcade release, it's fast-paced, you need to have precision and smoothness in the gameplay, and that's probably why you've got the such a downgrade in the graphic department. But I will say, once you start playing it and you get into it and you're focusing on the game more, you do it. You get used to how it looks, the presentation of it, and from that point onwards, it's probably the best version of the game, in my opinion. But Matt, if you want to tell me how you got on with the PC release, maybe that'll swing me around a bit, because obviously I've not played the PC, I've not played the PS5, but just going from the touchscreen element aside, that feels to me to be the best control.
I've never had the privilege of trying it on a touchscreen, so I will when I've got a Nintendo Switch version coming, which is great, and I will certainly give it a go. The method you're using, one with the thumbstick and then just dragging it over the screen, so I reckon that will make things a lot, I think, in some levels, quite a bit easier to sort of target, destroy things, and sort of pre-plan what you're going to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I've always been accustomed to controllers with it. I obviously tried the Apple TV version, which, for context, for the Nintendo Switch version, for example, the Apple TV version I tried was the lowest of the low in terms of performance, and that's not to sound harsh. It was 30 FPS, and I debate whether it was 1080p. It probably wasn't. So I'd rather take 60 frames for an arcade game than 30. I think it feels better. So those graphical dips on the Switch, I think, are a worthwhile sacrifice in my mind, at least, having played the Apple TV version, just sort of compare it in my head. The PC version, I tested on Steam PC. I've got a reasonably strong gaming PC. It didn't even break a sweat with it. It was flawless throughout in terms of performance, locked 60 FPS, 1080p throughout. I was a little disappointed that there wasn't higher resolutions that I could choose from. I'd have been interested to see how it performed. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination, but I would have liked those options to go 1440p or 4K. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe it was just partly because of the time frame they had, obviously, to then get this thing over from mobile to consoles, and they decided it wasn't worth the time. It's not a problem, but I would have liked it. It controls really well on PC. The controllers are really responsive. The targeting system, as you said, you have to fly over your targets and then you can let go of the fire button and it takes them all down. So you have to think about it a little bit more, I think, to the touchscreen ones. You have to plan your moves a little bit more carefully. But it performs brilliantly throughout. Looks great. No frame drops whatsoever. No real pop-in that I noticed on the graphics. I don't know so much about the PS5, PS4, or the Xbox versions because we haven't tested them. But what I got at the heart of it was a damn good arcade game which is easy to pick up, easy to play. The tutorial obviously helps as well. You get a nice tutorial as you get dumped into the game for the first time. You get your cutscene, then you do a little tutorial, then you go into your first level. But it's difficult to master, I think, especially with a controller. Having not played it on touchscreen, I can imagine it's easier on a touchscreen just from sort of seeing what you've been doing on Switch. And when we reviewed this on the Apple products last year, it looked like it lent itself better to touchscreen, but I can understand that because it was designed as a mobile game. I know when we interviewed Yu Suzuki, he did talk about they use controllers with testing and everything, so they could use controllers and obviously do, and it's implemented very well. But I think it lends itself better to touchscreens from what I've seen. But that doesn't draw away from a very good, solid arcade experience that you keep going back to, you keep wanting to play, and you keep wanting to improve with it. I had one weird thing with it in the options menu, which this might have been patched out by this point, is that when you set up, you go in, you can have a keyboard and mouse setup, which I haven't really dug around with too much, but I will try that at some point in the near future. And you can map your keys to whatever you want. You can't control or map your buttons. So with my Xbox controller, I didn't have the option to map anything, which also meant that I didn't have the option to know what the buttons did. Now it took me about 30 seconds to work it out because it's about, you know, you got your stick, you got your fire button, you got your slow down button. That's all you need. There's only 3 buttons. But I would have liked just either to be able to remap the buttons to what I would prefer potentially, or just a very quick, this is what your buttons are, like screen on the menus. But hopefully they've patched it out by this point. Sort of going into the menus, I felt they were probably a little bit clunky in nature. They're easy enough to get round, but I think if you're thinking about accessibility point of view, I do think they could be a bit cleaner in their presentation. But it's
in terms of navigation, again, it's the touchscreen just lends itself because you tap on the tabs, you tap on what you want. It does feel a bit difficult to select what you want with the controller.
Yeah, it can feel it. I don't want to use the term laborious. I think it's not as intuitive. But again, I think that's a residual product of it being a touchscreen game. And it's not a criticism necessarily. It's just something that I found when I was playing it at the time and testing it and all the rest of it. That said, for the money, bearing in mind it's £25 for the base release, we'll talk about the collector's editions a bit later. I have no complaints at all for the money. I can sit there, I can fire up a game, I can smash through a bunch of levels in, say, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour before I go out and do something. And I'm quite happy doing that. And then you rack up your hours, you then rack up your stars, which you obviously can buy extra guns, lore, costumes, all of that sort of stuff. It lends itself, for me at least, very much like the old Dreamcast days. You're about to go out, play football with your mates. You got half an hour. Great. I'll kill some time. You whack in Crazy Taxi. You run round, smash the arcade mode for half an hour. You go out. This is that sort of game for me.
That's exactly it, isn't it? When you compare it to a Dreamcast game, this is basically a modern day Dreamcast game in theory because of how easy it's to pick up and play. You've got all those unlockables that aren't trapped behind a paywall. You can actually play the game. And that's the joy of it. You're playing the same game over and over, like those Dreamcast games used to. You don't play through it and unlock a mode and then play through that mode and unlock. You're playing the same game basically to earn these stars. So each group of enemy gives you a star, and they rack up really quickly, and then you've got this big adventure map on the main menu screen, which is just an insane amount of unlockables. You really need to probably play through the game 20 to 30 times easily to unlock everything. And then those unlockables are extra challenges for the challenge mode. I've noticed what they've done, so going from like the Apple iPhone version of the game, where they introduced like events. So say for Halloween, they introduced like a Halloween event. I was going to say Christmas there. I don't think there was a Christmas one, but there was quite a few, kind of like each month from release for about 6 months, I would say. And what they've done is to sort of simulate that style in the console ports or the PC port, the events list now is just a stupidly long list. So it'll be
it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, but it'll be the same stuff. So it'll be like collect 10 stars, 50 stars, 100 stars, 200 stars, 500 stars, and then it'll go through like enemies. And then when it gets to the end of that list, it'll go back. It'll say collect 10 stars, 20 stars, 50 stars. So just by playing through the game once, you've got your unlockables there from the events. And then if you keep scrolling down, you've got even more unlockables from an event that they did, say, on the iPhone for Halloween. So within a couple of plays, you get in all these costumes. You can have Princess Arch in like a Halloween witch outfit, or the broomstick gun. So it's really cool actually how they've done that. So there's a lot of unlockables, just constantly feeding you loads of things like that to enjoy. And actually the customization options are insane, really.
It's almost limitless in some respects, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
when you look at that adventure map, and it is massive. Is there like 5 or 6 islands, something like that? It's
Something like
huge,
that, yeah.
and they all have little steps where it's either like you get extra stars,
Mhm.
you unlock a costume, weapon, whatever.
Unlock
And
the
there are
soundtrack as well, which is
yeah,
cool.
and there's literally hundreds of these things. So as you say, it's going to take a lot of playthroughs to essentially complete this thing. I know on Steam, and you'll probably have this on PlayStation and I assume Xbox, there's trophies involved as well. So that will be linked to progress in the game, levels cleared, enemies killed, time spent on the game. There's several ones where you have to log on to the game at like 3 in the morning to get a trophy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
random, isn't it? But that's all part of the replayability. And actually, you touched on this in challenge mode. Is all modes have all consoles rather have, or PC have, this challenge mode where you've got turbo mode, you've got one hit death mode, which I implore anybody to try because you ain't going to get very
No
far.
chance.
No chance. You've got extra stage mode, you've got fluffy, you've got the boss rush, you've got Stardust. There's plenty of other things there that unlock as you go, that you can unlock through the adventure mode or collecting stars or tickets or whatever it is. So they've got that added replayability there if you want it outside of the base game itself. But I find, and again, this is going back to the old era, that I dabble with that sort of stuff and go, oh yeah, try that out. I think back to like Crazy Taxi, Virtual Tennis, where you had like the mini games to improve your stats or whatever. It's very
Crazy
similar
Pyramid.
here. Yeah, and you sort of just work your way through the challenges and then you unlock extra bits and pieces. It's a bit like that here, but it doesn't impact the main game so much. The replay value, the main value in this game, for me at least, is the fact that you keep playing to get better, to beat your score, to collect more stars, and have that satisfaction of when you beat that boss for the first time. That's the sort of thing that you can't buy, and that, with a great respect to games these days, which are sort of based on dollar per hour and all this sort of stuff, where 60-hour, if it's not a 60-hour game, I'm not getting my value for money. Actually, games like this, where I want a short, sweet experience, which I can improve on, practice, and get hooked by that way, is just as valuable to me. And I get just as much pleasure out of improving, beating a level, and then going on to the next one and just testing myself as I do from a good story-based game. And that's why I think Air Twister lends itself so well to probably a certain crowd, don't get me wrong, but I would implore anybody who wants a different game, different experience, to try a game like this and to try Air Twister, because you will be impressed with it. It's a very solidly built game. It's, it runs well, it plays well, the controls work fine. I don't have many faults with it other than the nitpicky things that I've already covered. It's a damn good game for what it is, I think, at least.
Yeah, we kind of started off with the nitpicks, didn't we? And now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of it. And I must have sunk probably 30 hours into the iPhone version, to be honest. And that was a free thing for me because I've already got an Apple Arcade subscription. So I quite happily buying the game again, and I'm going to do the same with that because it's just a fun experience. It's a fun game. It is one of those that you pick up and play and sink hours into, not in one sitting or until completion, and then you move on to another game. This is definitely a game that you just want in your library just to keep coming back for like you say, Matt, like a 20-minute thing. And I want to touch upon a little bit on the fluffy mode that you mentioned in the challenge thing, because that's something that Yu Suzuki mentioned as well, is like a different style of play. because obviously that is from a 2D perspective where you're going from left to right on the screen.
Yeah.
You have to sort of dodge stuff. Not as intuitive as the main game. The controls are a bit floaty, bit fluffy, if you want to say that. It's a bit like you're floating on a cloud almost. But again, it's just another way to play this game. So there's more than just what you see, really. There's a lot of game and a lot of gameplay to experience. But behind all of that is this sort of same type of gameplay. So if you really enjoy your space areas, your Panzer Dragoons, which is the closest comparisons, you are definitely going to love Air Twister. It is a game straight out of an arcade like that, where you could even imagine one of Yu Suzuki's cabinets where it's like moving and you're flying around the screen. They could easily have transported this game into an arcade release if they wanted to. It feels like a classic arcade game.
I'd love to see this translated to VR.
That would be awesome. And he has spoken about VR as well. That would, a space area in VR. This literally is this, Air Twister. If you can implement that, now he's got it on the PlayStation 4 and 5 especially with the PSVR 2. I don't know how extra work that would take to sort of change the camera style to work in a PSVR 2 headset, but it would definitely benefit from that because it would be really cool. And then you could do like what Res Infinite has done in PSVR 2 with the eye tracking, so you could target enemies while looking at them. That would be really cool. Obviously, you've got
really cool.
The sense controllers that also give an extra control method as well. I think it would be a great experience in VR if he's listening.
I think, do it now, because I think again it's more replay value, isn't it? And I think VR lends itself to those old style arcade games anyway. It just does. Those short, snappy experiences that I think sort of PlayStation VR does really, really well. I think that could sit really comfortably within those titles and hold its own quite well. So if they are listening and want a bit of extra money, there you go, do it in VR.
Yeah, it's like a fourth sale from me.
Yeah, I think I'll be about 2 or 3 with the collector's editions. Which we'll come on to in a minute.
Okay.
So sort of final thoughts on the game before we then sort of look at how you can buy it, what additions are out there, and a little bit on the future for YSNET. So what would you give me a rating out of 10?
I think it'd have to be an 8. Switch port, probably about an 8, because obviously you've got the dipping graphics there. I love the game, to be honest. I loved it on the iPhone, and I still love it today, and I'm looking forward to playing it on the PS5 as well, just for that increased graphical experience and just a different way of playing it as well. It's going to be forced to use a controller is essentially what I mean there. With the touchscreen, I'm always going to play touchscreen on the Switch. So for the Switch alone and having the best control method, in my opinion, I would probably rate it an 8 out of 10.
Very
How about yourself, Matt?
That's fair. I'm going for an 8 out of 10 as well. I think as an experience, it's a really good, faithful arcade experience. Presentation, do you know what? It is out there. It is really, really out there, and I've said this repeatedly. But do you know what?
But with the floating swans.
Yeah, and the flying fish and the elephants and everything. But do you know what? You need games like this. You need games to be a bit out there, because we're in an era of photorealistic games all the time and $100 million budgets. You need games like this to show a bit of character, a bit of personality, and a bit of something different. And that's without talking about the soundtrack, which is mentally good. I don't think Air Twister would work quite as well without the soundtrack. It sounded a bit hollow. So again, I think they've done that well. I'd have to score it an 8 out of 10. Great experience overall. Performs really well on PC. Super solid. There are some nitpicks around the menus and some sort of the intuitiveness around the controls, around sort of you can see the touchscreen routes, but a really good, solid experience. 8 out of 10. I'd recommend it to anybody. I really, really would.
Agreed.
So then that sort of takes us on to, well, James and I have convinced you that this is a good game to buy. We do take commission. No, I'm joking. But where can you pick this up? As I've already said, you can get this on basically anything. So it's on Steam PC, digital download. It's on Nintendo Switch, physical and digital. Xbox is digital only, unfortunately. PlayStation 5, you can get it digitally and physically. PlayStation 4, it is generally digitally, but there is a special edition, which we'll talk about in a minute, which you can get a physical copy of it as well. The base versions are all around £25, give or take a few quid here or there. But there are also, through strictly limited games, there's a collector's edition, which is really, really cool. We'll talk about that in a second. There's also like a limited edition, which has got a different cover on it, which is where you can get the PlayStation 4 version as well. Are you picking up any of these collectors or special editions, James?
Yes, I've got a Japanese collector's edition pre-ordered from Amazon.co.jp, and yeah, there's a couple of different items in that one. It's a different sort of box style. Obviously, strictly limited games aren't creating that one. That is a separate release from, I guess, another company or ININ Games or whatever. And I've also got the strictly limited games collector's edition, PS5 for that one, and I got the Switch from the Japanese edition. And like I say, or like Matt says there, if you want to pick the base game up, it is available on just your regular Amazon. It's available on hit.com.
Yeah.
It used to be base. Probably on Game and all these other websites as well. So it's pretty much out there. You can get the Switch and the PS5 version rather easy. But yeah, the collector's editions, which ones have you picked up, Matt? Have you done the same?
So I've got the Japanese PlayStation 5 collector's edition coming from same place, amazon.co.jp. Hopefully that turns... I'll probably be here by the end of the week, hopefully, which would be great.
I think it has been
and
sent.
Also, like you, I've got the collector's edition from Strictly Limited, which I'm going to sort of go through a little bit what you get right now. It's about £63. Obviously, you have to add shipping onto that as well.
Mm-hmm.
For PS5, there are 500 of these available. On Switch, there's 1,500. I don't know what the how many numbers are left at this point, but I'd grab them pretty quickly because they will go eventually. But what you get, so you get a collector's edition box. You obviously get the game with reversible art sheet, which looks really cool. Actually, I think both art styles on there look really, really cool. You get an instruction manual. Now that's a throwback in itself, an instruction manual, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
You get an art book for Air Twister, which reminds me a little bit of the Shenmue 3 art book in terms of the shape of it, that long art book thing.
Pix and Love style.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see what's in that. You get the original soundtrack. Now, James and I bought the soundtrack, I think it was last year, which has got the pink front cover with Princess Arch on it. This one is a different cover. I presume it's the same tracks, but I'd be interested to compare it, and I will do unboxings of these anyway.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to compare the soundtracks if they're any different or not, because that could be, again, a bit of a collector's thing. You get the Yu Suzuki biography, which I imagine biography is career, and
it looks
from
really
what
cool,
I understand,
actually.
it does. And from what I understand, there's going to be some new stories in there as well, which, if there are, keep an eye on the website because we will make sure that's
stuff
reported. Yeah, it could do, and we'll definitely report on that, which is amazing. There is also an autograph card, which I think you touched on at the start, James. We're not sure if it's a physically signed one or printed on, and there's also like a mini artwork of Princess Arch as well. Again, it looks like it's signed.
Yeah,
but again, I don't know if that's printed.
That would be mental to me, because you've got it. If they are hand signed, you've got 2 Yu Suzuki signatures in this collector's edition. So
yeah, for 63 quid.
That's
insane.
Worth the purchase alone.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm not sure. I feel like they're going to be printed on, but it does specifically say autograph, doesn't it? So
it does, doesn't it? It'd be interesting to see, because obviously the Japanese version I think is going to come way before the strictly limited stuff, which is due to come. The collector's editions are due to come early next year.
Did that say autographed as well, the Japanese one?
Yeah, I think it did. So I'd be interested when I get that to see if it's actually physically autographed. Because if it is, it would lend itself that the strictly limited one is. And if it is, obviously I'll try and confirm that. If you're a Yu Suzuki fan and you want his signature,
amazing,
no-brainer, absolute no-brainer.
Instant
in my
buy,
mind.
mate. Yeah.
I mean, well, it was, wasn't it? We didn't. It
Yeah.
took about 2 seconds for us to discuss it, and that was it, wasn't it? So again, pick those up. Strictly limited games have them. The links will be in the description anyway if you want to pick those up. Moving sort of on a little bit, we're going to talk a tiny bit about what's next for YSNET. Now, I'm going over a little bit of old ground. We had the Ezra interview just over a week and a half ago now, and he talked about Shenmue 4, Shenmue 0, which we've talked about at length. I'm not going to go into that side of it too much here. But it's exciting for the Shenmue community that he's got these ideas around Shenmue 4, Shenmue 0. But what he does reference is a new game that they're working on. What do you think that could be? And does that excite you to see that YSNET have got another project in the works?
Definitely excites me, because then it means that something must be going well, must be doing something right to still be in business, which, is good news for Shenmue fan, because sales of Air Twister and whatever Yu Suzuki's next game is going to be are hopefully going to be contributing towards a possible future Shenmue title. And because he's got ideas for a 0 and a 4, we're going to have to really go out there and support Air Twister and make sure he's got the money to be able to do that. If you want to see more Shenmue, I would highly recommend grabbing Air Twister just to show your support to YSNET and Yu Suzuki, obviously, all his career-long 40-year history in the games industry is mad, yeah. In terms of what I think it's going to be, I've got no idea, Matt. I mean, we've mentioned this before, that he did at some point mention he wants to do like a new driving game. So maybe he's going through his old arcade classics like your Space Harrier he's made Air Twister. Maybe his next one on the cards could be a new type of Outrun style game, which would be really cool. Yeah, really cool to see. But yeah, who knows, man? I mean, it's just really cool and exciting that in the space of a few months now, we could be talking about another new game from YSNET Studios, depending on when they plan to announce that.
And do you think it'll go down a similar route? So, like, tied to Apple Arcade, for example?
First. I mean, possibly. It depends if it's what type of game it's going to be. If it's going to be another sort of budget arcade sort of title, then I'd say yes, that perhaps maybe Apple did a big deal for, like, maybe Yu Suzuki go create 3 titles for us kind of a thing as part of that deal, perhaps. Because I feel like if it's going to be a really big release type game, it's going to be a Shenmue game, and this doesn't feel like what he's talking about is a Shenmue game to me.
No, absolutely.
So unless they're creating huge games all of a sudden, I feel like it's going to be another sort of smallish arcade type, Air Twister type of game. But who knows? I honestly, I really don't know. So it could be anything at all, which is, again, exciting that Yu Suzuki's working on games still, and we've got another one coming very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, and again, I'm just speaking in my sort of point of view on this, is actually Yu Suzuki and Shenmue are inherently tied. He's, I think somebody, I can't remember who it was in our chat, mentioned the other day that it's almost like when you have 2 children, but one's a newborn, but they keep talking about the eldest. I can't remember who said that, but it's very much like that with Shenmue, isn't it? That Yu Suzuki's got this new game coming out, Air Twister, but everyone's still asking about Shenmue.
Yeah.
So it's inherently tied.
That's good, Yu Suzuki, but where's Shenmue? Is kind of the thing, isn't it?
So I can see why that he could become a little bit like, oh, for God's sake again, but generally he's pretty good with it. And actually, I'm quite pleased that he's working on other titles as well. Do I want Shenmue to carry on? Absolutely. But why doesn't it need to be working? And if he's getting also business through the door, he's making money, but he's also getting that creative outlet that satisfies him and what he wants to do as a game creator, then I'm all for it, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what he wants to do. It's what he's passionate about. He's passionate about creating good games. So why not create a load of these little arcadey type titles where he's got that plethora of experience that is probably unrivaled in game developers these days. There aren't many of these sorts of developers left. Most of them have either retired or moved on. So he's got a market here that actually he could really corner and use that experience and hook people back into those sort of arcade games that we grew up with. And that's a real talent, and I think a real outlet for him. So it excites me that he's working on new games. I don't know what it is. I'd love an Outrun type game. That would be awesome because
Maybe that's his
he has,
plan, Matt. Maybe he's planning to do a new air twist, a new Space Harrier, a new Outrun, a new Afterburner, and then put them as arcade machines in an arcade in Shenmue 4.
that would be insane.
Yeah.
That would be insane. Coming away from that a tiny bit, obviously, ININ Games picked this up off from the Apple exclusivity deal, which ran out this year. Do you think YSNET could work with ININ again? I'd like them to. I think certainly we've been quite lucky, and thank you over to Ed at ININ, who's been really responsive and really helpful with things, sort of moving things forward, getting review codes. Derek at PR Hound again, who's been really, really good with this, and obviously Joel at YSNET when this was all sort of coming out. Everybody's been really helpful to allow us the access to the game and access to Yu Suzuki, to have the interviews that we did, the Gamescom coverage. I would love YSNET to work with ININ Games again, just for the fact I think they've been really good with us, and I'm biased, but I think there seems to be a really positive relationship there between YSNET and ININ Games. Is that fair to say?
I would agree with that, and I would assume that if the next title, the upcoming title, is an Apple Arcade game, and it's going to come with another exclusivity sort of 1 year tie-in, I would say in a year's time we could see another ININ Games takeover, really, depending on how successful Air Twister is for them. And I mean, it perhaps doesn't need to be the world's greatest hit in that sense to be successful. I think, like you say, there's a real nice relationship building there between ININ Games. The personnel that work for them all seem really nice, really friendly, and that can only be a good thing for someone like Yu Suzuki. Just wants a nice, easy sort of relationship, not too convoluted like in previous things, not people money hungry, just wanting like a percentage of the earnings and not really doing much work to go with that. And ININ actually seem very much hands-on. Quite a lot of great promotion of Air Twister so far. So yeah, really nice to see.
Yeah, I'd like to see what they do next. But again, I'll check all their details in the comment below for everybody, so you can check out ININ Games, Air Twister, and also ININ Games history and all the other games that they've had a hand in, sort of either bringing back or at least sort of giving physical releases of certain games as well. I think, James, that'll draw us to a close. Thank you, everybody, for dropping in on the Air Twister coverage. James and I are going to be back with a stream of Air Twister on I think it's the 16th, Thursday the 16th of November. We've had to delay it a little bit. Unfortunately, we have to have lives. So we've delayed it a little bit, but we will be doing a stream of Air Twister, so you can see how bad I am at it. Because it will be the PC version off of my PC that we try. But for now, guys, thank you for dropping in on all the content. Don't forget, give us a like, share, subscribe. We're on Twitter, which is Shenmue_Dojo. I keep calling it Twitter. It's X now, but yeah, I'm just old. Facebook, Shenmue Dojo. Instagram, Shenmue Dojo. Twitch, Shenmue Dojo. YouTube, Shenmue Dojo VOD, VOD, videos on demand. And we're also on like Blue Sky, Sprout Social, and everywhere else. Shenmue Bloody Dojo. You know the spiel by now. But guys, thank you for dropping in. Actually type the word
bloody though.
Yeah. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. You might get something you don't want. Thank you for dropping in. James and I will be back with a stream in less than a week's time. There is a video from me this Saturday as well. And keep an eye out for the rest of the content as we head into the new year, where hopefully, in his New Year message, Yu Suzuki gives us some bloody hint about Shenmue 4, right? That's what we're looking for.
Think plasters, guys. Think plasters.
Yeah, there we are. But for now, guys, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
Take care, guys. Have a good one.
Oh, look at the time.